and backstage. Hi, Claire.
I got a one-eye this time.
Cool. Alrighty.
How are things where you are?
Things are pretty good. Jordan is peaceful so far. No wars around here at the moment. How are things in England? People still really poor? Most people?
I suppose I have no. I don't see people. Well, actually, just because we don't see certain things doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, I suppose my reality is determined by what I read on social media. Um,
You, you don't
because
see people
that's the nature
struggling with the cost of
of
living?
my occupation as a political activist. Yes, I am aware that things are always more than they are, and that people are complaining about their government and their taxes going to the stupid war in Ukraine, and the latest thing that Trump has said about Putin. Which is warlike, aggressive, threatening to shoot down planes, and the no-fly zone or something like that.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah. So, yeah. Um, I asked you, there's something I've been thinking about, and I asked you, I'm not sure if you responded to it in one of your comments on my videos, and said, I kind of feel like you're in some ways want to be or supported by Zionists. Like you made a
Just
comment
because I
like,
rejected your conspiracy theory that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk. I mean,
not just because you said it, why bother looking at it? And I think it's a really important thing to look at. And there's not like an isolated situation. Like the Jews do seem to like to assassinate and kill people they don't like.
so do
So
the
I said
Americans.
Jews.
So do the CIA. I mean, are we? Are we?
And you should look at it. Yeah, we should
Yeah,
look at it.
I
It's
do look
important
at
to.
it, but I'm not going to be supporting any conspiracy theory that I can't prove. That would be just silly. I mean, I
It's
can't
not.
prove it. You can't prove it. You may know a lot of people who think the Jews killed Charlie Kirk, but
Let's not just
it still
know.
can't be proven.
Okay, so there's two things here. First of all, is there evidence pointing towards it? And it's increasingly there seems to be, right? Um, and the second thing is, are you at all interested in getting money from Zionists to support your cause? Would it? I mean, it does sound a bit weird because you're a secular Quranist, but there are things that you said before. I'm just putting it out there, asking directly. That you seem to try to put everybody in this. You keep trying to say that Muslims are Zionists, and for some reason that's a important thing for you to put people into that category. Or so I do get the
No,
impression
I don't say
sometimes.
Muslims are Zionists. I say Muslims have difficulty processing the meaning of Zionism, which is simply the idea that Jews deserve a homeland. So I'm saying Jews can be Zionists as Jews, but also there are Christian Zionists who feel that Christians should support Israel, and this is common in Europe and America, because European national leaders are all Zionists, aren't they?
Yeah, they've been bought over. They've been bought. Yeah, by Zionists. Okay, so let me ask you. Let's stick on this idea of are you a Zionist or not? Would you call yourself a Zionist?
Well, I suppose as an individual, I would have no view on that. But having read the Quran and having discussed chapter 17, verse 104 with you in 2 streams on your channel and come to no conclusion about it, I I have come to the separate conclusion that obviously Muslims are not capable of discussing it. So, and I know there are other Muslims who actually did a stream on chapter 17, verse 104, but they didn't really come to anything. And I asked questions, and then I was disabled from commenting. So that particular verse seems to be saying that Allah is Zionist, because in that verse it tells Moses and his people to go and dwell in the promised land, and then it goes on to say that in the end times, Jews who are not already there are supposed to gather there. So that is what I understand verse to be saying. So if God expects Jews to live in the promised land, he must be a Zionist, mustn't he? And for any sense to be made out of that verse, God seems to be saying, yes, Jews have the right to live in the promised land, and Gentiles, righteous Gentiles who would be running the Holy Land, because it's clear that the Jews cannot do it on their own. I mean, they're only 1% of the total human population, so we can't expect them to suddenly, become, this sort of number one superpower of the world and say, we're going to live in Israel now. Obviously, they can't do it without the Gentile imperialists saying, we're going to give you land and we're going to let you live there under our laws. And I'm saying, really, the competition is Christian and Muslim Zionism. So if Muslims are going to say Jews can live there, Jews would have to live under Sharia. And if Jews live under Sharia, and I'm saying Israel is an American colony, then America and the rest of the West would soon follow, assuming Jews, ever say they want to live under Sharia. I don't think Uncle Sam would allow it, even if Jews in Israel said, we don't want to fight anymore. We want to live in peace with our Arab and Muslim neighbors. If Jews properly following their religion, Jews properly following their religion would find Sharia a walk in the park, because Judaism.
Sure, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of to what extent you're a Zionist, what kind of Zionist you are, or something like that. Well, so you said do Jews deserve a homeland? I don't think.
I'm going to say yes.
I would say no. Yes. No, not of course, because that's like saying, do Muslims deserve a homeland? Like, do Muslims? Of course,
they're going to say yes. There's Yazidis.
No, not they. I'm talking about you.
They deserve a homeland.
Do I believe in an ethnic? What do they call it? A Jewish state is what do they call it? An ethnic state.
Ethno-state.
Ethno-state, right? I don't believe in that's basically a racist state, right? Because it's a state based on race. So I don't believe in states based on race. Do you know what I mean? You don't deserve a land, and certainly you don't deserve somebody else's land, because it wasn't their land to take, the Jews' lands to take, right? They forcibly took it off Palestinians. So let me ask you another direct question. We just want to get to the bottom of this, and we can move on to something else, right? Do you think it was okay to displace Palestinians to start the state of Israel?
Of course not. But the point is,
I'm just checking,
no, you said something, and you didn't want to discuss the whole history of the thing. So before the Palestine Mandate, before the British got the Palestine Mandate in 1917, it belonged to the Ottoman Empire. And historically, the British have had their eye on Israel for a long time, because they were a marine empire. Israel is the crossroads between Africa and Europe and Asia, and therefore was important for geopolitical reasons. And also, Israel faces the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea, and is next to the Suez
strategically, it's useful. Cool. Okay. And then?
So you would expect the British to want it, and they kept it only for a while, because after they, quote, won, unquote, World War II, they had to abandon a lot of their imperial colonies, because, after the fall of Singapore, when they
but what's your point?
So they couldn't hang on to any of these. They had to leave India, etc.
Sure.
Why do you think they partitioned India to
So
make
what's
sure?
that got to do with? Is it acceptable to Are you
I'm not
correcting
saying it's
something I've
acceptable.
said?
I'm telling you what they did. We already know, don't we, that all empires behave like gangsters. We know the British dealt drugs to the Chinese.
Are you trying to justify the displacement of the Palestinians? I'm not sure
No,
where you're going with
I'm
this.
just saying that the British imperialists behaved like gangsters.
Sure.
Right,
So the
and
British aren't
you're British,
wonderful
and
people.
you're
Sure.
not going
Yeah.
to be defending the how the British imperialists behaved, are you? So I'm
No.
telling you the history of it. So
Yeah.
I'm saying, there are land grabs, and the British aren't the only one to, change the racial composition of the countries they conquer. I mean,
So
obviously Australia full of Aborigines, and then they,
I'm
transported
not
all.
sure. I'm not sure where what the point
You
of
asked me a
what you're trying.
question. Let me answer it.
I'm confused. Okay, but are you? So you already answered it. You said it was not good that Palestinians were displaced. So I'm not
Yes,
sure
but
what
I'm
else you're
saying this
saying.
is how empires behave. And I'm saying Israel is run under the principles of Christian Zionism.
Hmm.
And Christian Zionism has a purpose of paying for Jews to go and live in Israel, paying their removal costs, etc., and then converting them to Christianity. They complain about that. So, do you think if Jews are really in charge of Israel, that they would allow this to happen to them?
I don't
They're
see that
supposed to hate
happening.
Christianity. They say rude things about Jesus and his mother.
I don't see. I don't see lots of Jews becoming Christian.
Okay, but maybe you don't pay attention. Maybe you, yeah, I don't think you're interested in theology. I don't think you listen to Rabbi Tovia Singer going on about why Christians believe in nonsense with his
Can you tell me statistics on what percentage of Jews in Israel becoming Christian?
half of them are secular, so they don't want to believe in anything, right? They're mostly liberal. You may have heard of the gay parades in Tel Aviv.
Yeah,
So,
totally
so,
agree.
so
Yeah.
they are really an American colony.
No, but I'm gonna answer the question about you are claiming that there's some sort of plan to get the Jews to become Christian. I'm just asking
Yes.
what are the statistics behind that? Is there any
Okay,
statistical
I
evidence?
wasn't prepared for the statistics, but if you go to Rabbi Tovia Singer's
Hmm.
YouTube channel, you will see that he's always engaging with these Christians come to Israel to convert Jews to Christianity. And there is this
Okay.
particularly annoying, I think she's Korean, and then there were these two Chinese people telling these Jews to convert to Christianity.
Okay, cool. And last question about you being a Zionist, just because it's the obvious last question, I guess, maybe. Do you get funding by any
No,
Zionist
I do
group?
not get funding
Would
from
you would
anyone.
you would you like it?
If the Israeli government said, we're going to pay you for what though? What do you think they might want to me to pay? Want to pay me for? Because I would only say secular Quranism with Israeli characteristics is a way
Yeah,
forward
so
for you if you want to live in peace with your Arab neighbors. But I foresee problems with your American masters who won't like it.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Because I think Americans who, thinking, well, if the Jews in Israel can agree to live under Sharia, we will have to follow soon. One way or another, if Jews decide to live under Sharia, America cannot be far behind. And if America adopts it, the rest of Europe will, and eventually the rest of the world.
Okay, so you're not ruling out that you would like some money, but you're saying
I
that it
really,
wouldn't.
it would be nice for me to receive some financial acknowledgement for my troubles. I mean, but if Muslims said, "Oh, we really like your secular Quranism, can we
Yeah,
help by boosting your tweets or paying you?" But I'm not monetized on YouTube, so I can't accept
yeah,
money. But other
yeah.
ways, yes. But
Tell
then
me
they might
about
decide to
the
debank me.
Tell me about the Israeli characteristics again. I forget. How does that secular Quranism with Israeli characteristics? What are the Israeli characteristics that secular Quranism has or should have?
Right, thank you for that question. So basically, my proposal for secular Quranism is for the judiciary of the Supreme Court to go through the Quran, identify, list, and number the commandments of Allah, and then there'll be this list that is capable of being made into legislation, and then they make it into legislation and repeal all the ones already in place that go against these principles, and make further legislation if necessary to support the ones already in place after the passing of the commandments of Allah that they'll be making into legislation. And this would be the new foundation. And I'm saying I'm not going to be telling them how to do it because they'll just ignore me. But the whole point of this exercise is that people will be moved towards using the Quran as a piece of as guidance for their legislation, and that would be better than the current situation, and that eventually people will see the benefits of belief in God and the afterlife.
But what about the Israeli characteristics? But what does that mean?
It just means that the Supreme Court of Israel will be the ones undergoing this exercise to identify, list, and number the commandments of Allah that should be made into legislation, that could be made into legislation.
So, is your ideology or philosophy, whatever you want to call it, targeted only toward Israel?
No, it's
I thought it was
targeted at
towards
every.
America, right? I thought you said initially it
Yes.
would be for America, but why? I still don't get the Israeli characteristic because you seem to be like, when I talk to the Israelis, then they would implement it. But then I thought you were going to initially talk to the Americans, so I don't
Well, I'm
see.
doing it in as many ways as possible. I speak to the Chinese, the Indians, the British, the Americans, but to do it quickly, it has to come from the top. So it has to come from the global hegemon, right? Because that would be the quickest way of doing it, and then everybody will follow because it's like, oh, it's the most powerful nation on earth. They've decided to adopt Sharia. Maybe we should follow too, or have a good think about it. But if it's some little country like Monaco or, I don't know, some Pacific island, people are going to say, oh, they've just gone a bit mad. They're a little
Sure,
country nobody's ever
I
heard of.
I get that you're, you want the global hegemon, however you say it, right, to adopt it because they're most powerful, and then they could get other countries to do it, or other countries think it's possible. But I still don't get the Israeli characteristics bit. Like, give me an example of what the Israeli characteristic bit would add to the secular Quranism philosophy.
Okay, thank you for that question. Okay, I don't know if you know that I have been saying that Israel is basically an American colony. I
Yeah,
know a lot of people
that's fine. Let's
respond.
assume it is. No, they're not.
Okay,
How does?
so
Yeah.
so either will be fine. It's like you have three global Christian empires. The first one was the Spanish Empire. The second one, the British Empire, and now the American global empire. That they're all identifiably Christian, and if they change their political system, then it will have a lot of influence globally. Don't you think? And if Israel's just an American colony, then the idea will be accepted by the most powerful nations on earth.
So your logic is that given Israel is a colony, you should add it to the title of your book. I don't really get it, but maybe somebody else does.
No, please, just let me understand. If Israel is a proxy of America, if Israel, you know what I mean. It's like really, Israel is controlled by America. So Israel is just
I'm not
a
necessarily
colony of
agreeing,
America.
but I'm saying, but I understand what you're saying, okay. But I'm just trying to understand the Israeli characteristic bit.
Well, if India decides to adopt secular Quranism, it would be secular Quranism with Indian characteristics. If America adopts it, would be with American characteristics, etc.
That's what I thought your target audience was, America. So you would say with American characteristics rather than Israeli characteristics. I recommend you change the title or your philosophy to make it easier to understand.
Sorry, what do you want me to change it
Remove
to?
the Israeli characteristics because I don't think it helps. It just confuses things. I'm still confused. Just call it, if you want to call it American characteristics, that would make more sense because you've easily explained to me that you're going to target America as the first adopters.
Well, yes, I am targeting any country in the world who wants to adopt it, but obviously the most powerful countries would be, my preferred
America.
adopters. Yes.
America, right? So just
Yes.
call it American characters. You drop the Israeli characteristic thing.
No, but
That'd be
I
really
also
bad.
want Israel to adopt it too. So why should I drop it?
Oh, but then so that means Israel is a special target for some reason.
Yes, because I mean, surely you know that these Christians, despite their 3 global empires, are always complaining about the Jews. So they're always thinking, oh, we're the eternal victims of Jews. Look at them, look at what they did to us, and how they control us, and and they're always going on in this manner. So
Are they
in
wrong?
the minds of these
Are they wrong
Christians,
about?
Jews
Are they wrong
rule
that?
them.
Okay, so a lot of people are. So I would say there's a massive. You can call it rise in anti-Semitism or
Yes.
Israel hate, which is increasingly justified now. So you might not consider it evidence, but most people can see
No,
it.
I
There's a
hear
lot
it
of
all the time.
evidence.
I'm on X,
Yeah,
somebody just said
sure. And
anti-Semitism is now gone
increasingly
mainstream.
justified, right? So you seem to be saying that people, like the way you're coming over, you're saying that Christians are just complaining or just being victims for no reason. Do you think there's any justification to be I don't want to say anti-Semitic, but anti-Zionist? Is there any justification for that?
Well, of course, because people see how the Palestinians are being exterminated, and they don't like it, and but for some reason they want to big Jews up into this entity that controls America, when in fact and on the other hand, they also know that without
Are you
America's
claiming they're
unwavering
not?
support of Israel, they wouldn't be doing any of this, would they? Would the Israelis be doing all this bombing? And if they didn't know that America would immediately support them without question?
Right. So yes, they depend on America's support. But my question is, you seem to be claiming Jews or Zionists to be a bit more accurate, because there are Jews who are against Zionism. Zionists do not have control over American government. Are you claiming that?
I'm saying a lot of people, and for Gentiles in the West, boomers have been accused of being unquestioningly Zionist, right?
Who?
And this isn't.
Who have
You
been
haven't heard of boomers?
boomers? Yeah.
You don't know the
Okay.
expression.
Yeah, I know
People,
the frame. Boom is born in the 1950s, kind of.
yeah, from after the war,
Yeah.
1946 to 1964, I think
Oh,
that's the
all right.
people who are called boomers were born in this time period,
Yeah, sure.
and they all unquestioningly support Israel. Most of
Really?
them.
Oh, you mean in America? Okay.
No, and in Britain as well, because they always think of Israel as being particularly virtuous because they watch all
I've
these
never.
movies, Schindler's List,
That's
and although okay, I know you didn't see them, but it was part of the culture,
my
right?
dad's a
That
boomer. There's no. I've
but
never.
you're Muslim, and Muslims
Yeah.
are just anti-Semites, right? I mean,
No,
this is
but
how
no,
it is
Muslims are
equated.
Semites, largely Semites.
Okay, but not all Muslims are Arabs, and
Yeah.
there have been Jews
But we've
who
never been anti-Semitic. I don't know Muslims
I
who are
don't know why you're
anti-Semitic.
denying this.
No, Muslims love Jews, especially Ahmadi Muslims. We're really good. We have great relationships. We've historically had wonderful relationships. Like Jews came as, what do they call it? Refugees to Palestine, and so many Muslims let them have their house. How is that anti-Semitic? Muslims have never been
No, we're
anti-Semitic.
talking about now. The
Even
average
now, they're
British Muslim will be
anti-Zionists.
just seething with hatred for Jews.
No, they're anti-occupationist. They're anti,
But
people
it's
being shot
conflated.
down.
It's the same thing, right? In their minds, it's
Nah,
the same thing.
nah.
I
Muslims,
mean,
Jews, love Jews, love Jews.
well,
Muslims love
I
Jews.
mean,
Yeah.
the
I mean,
Ahmadis
yeah.
are considered heretics by the
No,
mainstream
but
Muslims. So
generally, I
I
would.
guess they won't agree with you.
You go to Speaker's Corner, people are quite polite to the Jews, but then they make fun of them for being Zionists. And the one in Speaker's, and for people who don't know what Speaker's Corner is, really famous international debate space in London, right? There's only one person who's kind of really hated. That would be, what's that? All-out Zionist Jew who's there, but the other Jews are, people have casual conversations with them and stuff. So
Yes,
anyway,
I do
yeah,
see, very Jewish-looking people occasionally turning up
yeah,
to, listen
they're quite
to things.
popular. Some of them are quite popular there as well, even amongst the Muslims. So but it's just there's one guy who's all out,
Oh,
just
I think you
Zionist.
mean Joseph Cohen, right?
That's the one. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I debated him once, but yeah, keep forgetting his name. Yeah.
Well, he's not really, a rabbi, right? He's just a Zionist,
Yeah.
paid to,
I'm just saying
do
he's
his
the
thing.
only unpopular one, I would say. Jew.
Yeah, but you see, he's not really religious. There are people who support Zionism not for religious reasons,
All
because
right, I didn't know he was not religious. Okay, that's interesting.
well, I mean, of course, he's going to say he's religious, but his knowledge of Judaism is not rabbinical, right? I
Okay.
mean, the secular Jews and religious Jews, and they don't even agree with each other most of the time. So,
Oh.
the desire for people to conflate all these Jews without even, asking about, is this Jew a secular Jew or a religious Jew, or an
Mm,
Orthodox Jew or a Reformed Jew? I don't think people make these distinctions in their minds because,
mm,
obviously, if you're a different kind of Jew, you're not going to agree with a lot of things, such as how to live and whether to keep the Sabbath and whatever. I mean, I'm
mm,
basically saying that if you're a secular Jew, you shouldn't be considered a Jew at all because they mess everything up and confuse everybody. But
yeah,
I mean, this
yeah.
is a problem with Christians too in the West. It's like, when they're scared, they call themselves Christian. Do they really even believe that, Jesus is God? They probably don't know anything about the Trinity. They call themselves
Mm,
Christian because mum and dad took them to church, and that's about it. But I mean,
mm, yeah. What is this video going to be called? Am I a Zionist?
What would you like it to be
As
called?
in, I don't know. I thought it'd be funny.
I'll have a good think after that. I mean,
Yeah,
I do
yeah,
want it to reflect, the contents of our conversation, and
yeah,
I'm glad that you have decided to raise the subject. Yes,
yeah.
yes, I will
What
mention
next?
Zionism.
What next? I was going to discuss. What was I going to discuss with David? And then I've just sent him another email because he really wanted to talk about the UN General Assembly. So I just found a video and poached it. But I was going to ask him to discuss: are there do good wives exist? And I was going to react to some Pearl Davis videos. Do you know Pearly Things?
Oh yes, yes. She's anti-feminist.
Yeah,
But the thing is, she doesn't propose any solutions. She's just going to say feminism bad. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it, girl? And there's no
yeah, that's true.
answer. So,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I'm saying Sharia is the answer, but I guess a lot of men would rather die than admit that. They would rather die and go to hell a few times than admit that. I mean, do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I was talking to this Catholic academic in Oxford, and he was just doing his Catholic thing. He's brown, right? He looks like a
Okay,
Pakistani, but
sure.
basically, or Indian. But anyway, he he has his public schoolboy accent, and so I asked him, what are you going? What would your next religion be? After you have died and you've met God and He's not Jesus, and God decides to give you another chance, at correcting yourself, what would that religion be? What would the religion of your parents that you're going to be born to? What religion would that be? And he actually said Christianity. It will be Christianity again.
Again, yeah. So
To show,
he has to say that, right?
yeah. So I'm deducing from that he doesn't even believe in an afterlife. He does, he literally doesn't. He just
No, you made up the scenario that if you were born again and you had a second chance, what would you do? And you'd be like, obviously, I'll still be Christian because I really believe in it. That's all he's saying, right?
yeah, but he can't even entertain the idea that God might not be Jesus. So he was worshipping the wrong thing all the time, right? With his worship of the Trinity, or he doesn't believe in an afterlife, so he's not afraid of eternal damnation and all the other stuff that believing people should believe in, that there will be reward and punishment in the afterlife. He obviously doesn't believe in that, and all he cares about is not being proven wrong in his current life.
You know what? Recently, I've been contemplating. Well, I'm always contemplating my life, but I was like, what are my big goals going to be? Maybe you can help me out. So, um, I'm close to finishing an app, and that app might give me more financial freedom to live anywhere else, whatever, right? Building a house is really cheap here. Like you can make a mansion for 50K or something. And when I say cheap, it's because life is really cheap. So you save loads of money. So that could be like another goal, like, oh, make a house, settle down somewhere or something. Being closer to God, contemplating becoming a sort of semi-hermit or something. I don't know, something like that. What are your ambitions? Maybe I'll bounce some ideas off you.
Well, a lot of people say, what am I doing in the UK? Because it's, or in the West, which is a civilization in descending into chaos. And but I suppose, if I'm going to be promoting secular Quranism, it will not help me to be promoting it from anywhere not in the West, would it?
Yeah.
They'll be just saying, you living on your tropical island or wherever you are that's not in the West, who are you to tell us what to do? I mean, they already say that, right? So I guess I have to stay in the West for a bit longer to make my point that, what you're going to do to solve your problem if you and your intellectuals refuse to even discuss the subject of the nature and purpose of religion. What is religion for? Why does everyone have it? What does, what do all religions that have been considered reasonably successful have in common? And I'm saying it is supporting marriage and the family. And then after that they just change the subject. Their heads explode and they want to change the subject because basically these white nationalists, they can't bear the idea of having to marry a woman of their own race and paying for the kids. That they would rather die gay and transgender. I think if you put the option to them, they will actually say that, and they're just they have this verb called LARPing. Have you heard that? LARPing.
LARPing.
Yeah.
LARPing is familiar. I don't really use it. LARPing, like talking rubbish or something. What is it? LARPing? LARPing around? Like,
yes, it means live action. Sorry,
I
live
thought there was
action
an actual
something
word.
player.
Oh, right.
Hold
I
on.
thought LARPing is an actual word, not an acronym.
Well, it's been made into a verb, right? And
LARP.
I can't
Live
actually.
action role player.
That's right. Live action role playing. So what it means is that they're just pretending. They're pretending to be white nationalists. But if you ask them to do what they're supposed to do as somebody who cares about the future of their race, they're not going to do it. They're not even going to say that, well, obviously, we need to do something about raising white birth rates because otherwise our governments will keep importing cheap immigrant labor to replace the white proletariat, the white middle classes, and then eventually all of us. Because, I mean, if you think of the government, what's a government supposed to do to, justify its own existence? It must have people to govern, right? It must have people to govern. And traditionally, governments would breed its citizens, right? But if the white ones won't breed, I guess the government gives up on them. And says, well, the white ones won't breed. Well, we'll just import the non-white ones, and they'll breed, right?
Okay. So let's go down this argument. So there is a government who is purposely importing immigrants because they have babies. Is this an evil government by any chance? Like, let's say the UK. Is it evil? Is it who are the people who really pull the strings in the UK government? Would you say? What kind of people are they? Let's try to get an idea of where you're coming from.
They would be atheists pretending to be Christian when it suits them. But they have no principles, so they would, lie to themselves and, support wars that don't benefit the country in order to continue getting paid because that's what the European elites are supposed to do.
Okay, so based on that idea,
from Washington.
Sure. Okay. So I can basically agree with that, right? But this is the reason why I asked that question, because it seems to be a contradiction. If you're going to import, what's it called, immigrants, right? The problem with that is a lot of them are going to be Muslims, and Muslims are going to outbreed everybody, and then they're going to take over or control the government. And I don't think the people who are pulling the strings, these atheists, would really want that. So it kind of is against their plan to control, let's say, the UK, if they import immigrants who would eventually take over society. Or do you think there's something wrong with that logic that I've just offered there?
Oh, I think they... Okay, I don't want to just assume that people are evil. I think they fall into evil ways. So it's like a drug also, importing cheap immigrant labor, it's a solution to your short-term labor problem, right? It's like, oh, after the war, so many, white British men have died. We need people to, do the things that we need to do because all the men have died, and we're going to get women into work, blah blah blah. And then it's like, oh, we've got the Pakistanis here, we've got the Ugandans here, we've got the the Caribbean people here, the Jamaicans, and it's like a few more won't make a difference. Let's have, a few more here and there. And I would actually use the analogy of a drug addiction.
So immigrants are an addiction because it's an easy solution, and then they keep depending on them because they don't have an alternative, and they haven't quite figured out how to deal with the Muslim problem of overtaking the country. Or maybe they have. They'll just do the Zionist. Zionism is supporting the anti-Muslim marches that, that the so-called white nationalists. I mean, the white nationalists are supported by Zionists. So maybe they get the immigrants, they get them to the work, and then get other people to hate them to, I don't know, slow them down from taking over the country, I guess, or something like that. Is that the game plan? Do you think that these atheist
I don't think they even
overlords
have a game plan. They're just
Oh, really?
firefighting. I really,
Okay.
because it doesn't make sense even, if you want to be in charge, you want people to think well of you and to trust you without questioning too much your reasons and your policies, right? You want them to, it's like, well, if you control the media and the armed forces and the banking system, that should be really easy to do. If you control all these things, you should at least give a possible imitation of governing rationally, right? Instead of people thinking, are we mad? Are we evil? Are we stupid? Why are we doing this?
Okay, so they're basically, they're so greedy, they're overcome with greed that they don't have a rational way of behaving and a rational way of making people not hate them and stuff like that. Okay, interesting. Makes sense. Fair enough. I would say that greed can make you mad. What is Joel saying? So Joel started by saying your argument core is not addressing the way modern Western economies work. Well, what is your argument about? You mean referring to your immigrant plan or something?
I think if he's talking about usury, easy money, just shaking the money tree and creating money out of nothing. And then he's saying Japan is getting it right. I've just read an article in of Japan about Japan having all these Muslims and mosques popping up. So it's the Japanese are also having a very low birth rate. Their average age is now nearly 50. So I don't think the Japanese are doing that well.
Yeah. Interesting. I never knew. I mean, I've heard some Muslims, some Japanese becoming Muslim, but I thought it was a small number, but interesting. Okay, so let's talk about usury.
An article
Go on.
showing a Japanese person praying, and I'll find it for you. It's a Japanese newspaper, the Asahi Shimbun, and it shows a Japanese person praying. Well, at least I think he's Asian. Oriental, East Asian.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, I don't think Joe realizes that Japan is a 51st state of America, right? The Americans, New Japan, that they have the naval base in Okinawa. The Americans run Japan.
Okay, so shall we outline the problem with usury? Maybe Joel thinks usury is a good idea or something. So how would you outline the problem with usury?
Well, it makes people
maybe we should start by saying what usury is. Because most people, that's a theological term, isn't it, for interest?
Yeah. So if you think you can create money out of nothing and shake the money tree every time you're feeling poor, you will keep doing it, and then it becomes another behavioral addiction, and then soon you just keep borrowing. It's like, oh, we'll just borrow and borrow until you get to the position of knowing that you cannot even service the monthly payments of your debt. And what's going to happen is that the people who keep lending you money realize you will never pay it back because you can't even service the monthly payments. And then they will stop lending to you and they will foreclose on you.
And in
Right?
that process, money is becoming worthless, because if you just keep printing lots of it, it just becomes worthless, as we're seeing around the world in Western countries.
Yeah, and then Joel Kemp, is asking about the lowering birth rate of Japan. About 25 years ago, Japanese women were put on the pill or were given the option of going on the pill. So once that happens, is that women will think, well, if I can sleep around without getting pregnant, I'm just going to sleep around with the men I really fancy. Not the boring, not so attractive looking kind of guy, and therefore that will delay marriage and obviously lower the birth rate and etc. etc.
Who is
Right?
Joel? I mean, like, where is he coming from? Was he just a troll, or like is the birth rate related to debt? Probably. If you don't have any young people making money, then you're probably going to have more debt, I guess, because I think it's true that if you pay into your pension, it doesn't really pay for you when you're old. It just helps towards it. But really, you need young people to support you. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's the general understanding, that pensions don't really support you in your old age. They just pay a little bit towards it, but really you need young people to create the wealth that takes care of the older generation. Is that kind of pyramid? Is that right?
Yeah, because care homes are very expensive, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if you have a home and you end up in a care home, your kids are not going to get anything.
Yeah.
So and now they're trying to sell to boomers. Oh, you've got this boutique care home, and look how nice it is, and whatever. And I think a lot of people are whose children they are have realised they're not going to get anything. And yesterday I read an article by Paul Craig Roberts about children saying, we want our inheritance now before you spend it, mum and dad. And they're being kind of bullied into saying, well, if you're not going to give it to us, you won't see your grandchildren. Or they might just outright bump off mum and dad, right? And make it look like an accident or something. All these things are happening even now. And also, boomers and zoomers do not agree on politics, right? You may remember SJJ. And whenever I said, well, what does your father think? And he's just a boomer. He's just a boomer. He doesn't know anything. I can't talk about, anything with him.
I think that's just white people. Actually, no. I mean, there is a difference in politics, I guess, but it's particularly white people. They don't know. SJJ is some white kid, right, or whatever in England, right? So they don't get along with their parents, so it's not a surprise that they have a difference in politics. They probably have a difference in everything.
Yeah, and also they're just not used to discussing anything. And also on X, I find one from America, one from Australia, and just admitting that I want to talk about politics with my family, but my wife forbids it. My wife won't let me, at family reunions. But I remember when I was a child, the grown-ups are always talking politics with each other. And now in my own home, my own wife stops me from talking about politics. How sad is that? totally under control, feminine control.
Yeah, wow, yeah, amazing. What was this last comment by Joel? Like, so Core is not informed about how a cohesive society, however aging, is resistant to the plan. Which plan?
Yeah, they never explain themselves properly.
Oh, I
It's like,
see.
obviously the West is not a cohesive society because it hasn't got a religion, right? I would say Westerners
Most
are
people would
in
say
a
it's breaking down. Yeah, most people would agree. So, is he claiming that the West is a cohesive society? Is that what you're claiming? Because next to nobody believes that, Joel.
yeah, unless they think, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism is a respectable belief system, but no, it isn't. The moment but okay, if they have a belief system, it's hatred for Jews and Muslims, right? That's the only thing that sort of gets them, in the guts, and they really feel it. And as you can tell if you read, any of the posts and videos that they keep posting on X, which actually encourages it.
Do you
Right.
think so? I'm not sure that was it like 150,000 people marched with Tommy Robinson? Is that correct? Haven't been really following because normally it's such a small group that I don't take notice of it, and it doesn't really represent most Londoners, whatever. Is that correct or roughly correct that a lot of people marched in London in these
Yeah, I mean,
white?
there've been, a few pictures of Westminster Bridge being filled with, people. But of course, the numbers are in dispute, right?
Okay.
So the police are going to say it's smaller, and the organisers are going to say it's bigger.
Okay, my reason for asking is this becoming a serious, oh, 1 million, really? Okay. Is this becoming in any way a serious movement? Before it was just a bunch of unemployed, poor, uneducated people, right? And not just to be dismissive. I mean, it's just the kind of people that would turn up to these marches. Is it becoming a broader movement? Is it? I mean, maybe there's lots. The number of unemployed white people is going to increase, so that becomes a significant group. I mean, what do you think's happening? Like, are they becoming a powerful group? These white
Well,
people.
they still want to carry on voting, so they're part of the problem. I mean, if they think that voting is going to solve their problems, they're just showing their stupidity, and of course the government will just carry on doing whatever it's doing and calling them names and putting them into jail for saying things on social media. That's what the government is doing now, anyway. 10 years for hate speech, maybe 14,
Okay. Yeah.
which would
And
shut them
then
up, good and proper, you know.
I don't think. Yeah, well, I think prisons are pretty full, right? In the UK, and that would just make martyrs of them. And they don't have anything to do anyway, so they're quite like prison, free food and whatever. I'm saying they. I get the general impression whenever I see interviews, they don't look like people are employed or particularly smart people. Like the conversations that come out of them are ridiculous. I think I saw, was it a video or something? Like there, there's some guy, like just the level of conversations makes no sense. Like there's a kid who's a white kid who basically asks questions about Palestine to, the average, not the average, but to white people, and they start off by saying we don't want immigrants and it's costing a lot of money, and then this kid who's interviewing them says, what about should we send billions, with a B, to Israel? And he says, oh, we don't know about foreign stuff, but he says, but it's lots of money, shouldn't we stop that? And so, I don't know about it. And then I didn't see the whole video, but one of the comments said that there was one of these people were holding an Israeli flag, but he didn't know why he was holding the Israeli flag. But this is the kind of level of intelligence that we're dealing with in these groups.
Well, the people holding the Israeli flags would be, I guess, kind of state-sponsored, right? Because I mean, if you really thought about it, it's like, well, why are indigenous white British workers, being homeless while migrants who cross a channel in one of their dinghies get accommodated in hotels? Why? That would be their, standard question, right? And then they would be thinking, what about this war in Ukraine? How does it serve our interests? Oh, it's the Jews. They control us. They control the entire political system. But actually, I think the reason is all the European national leaders just take orders directly from Washington, and America has not quite made its mind up on its foreign policy. And maybe Trump is being threatened with assassination, which is why he's flip-flopping on so many things. I mean, he did campaign saying that he would end these endless wars, and now he's talking very aggressively to the Russians. So we don't know, what's going on in his mind, and I doubt if anybody does either. I mean, he changes with the weather, doesn't he? Trump, I mean.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. Does he have any game plan, or is he entirely controlled by some Zionist group? Because he's clearly being blackmailed to some extent.
Yeah, they probably think, one of these days we're going to get you. We're going to get you like we got Charlie Kirk. So you better watch it, Mr. President. And he probably thinks, and if we don't get you, we're going to get your family. Right? I guess that will, put the frighteners on most people, right?
Yeah, so so let's say he's just a Zionist puppet, Trump is. So what's the game plan? Just take over the world, right? So just cause trouble with everybody, fight everybody, cause wars. What do you think what is the plan there?
Well, I think the Americans have gone mad, and they're basically committing suicide by cop. They want to start a world war, just to say we're the ones who were the most powerful country in the world, and we're going to blow up the world so nobody will have anything after that.
Okay.
We're the beginning and end of history, and screw you.
Oh, wow. Is that the plan? Okay. All
Well,
Muslims
it's my theory, because, I mean, that's the only way to explain their behavior, right?
Yeah, it is a suicidal plan to basically start World War III.
Yeah, I mean, even the Israelis talk about the Samson option, and we know what happened to Samson. He pulled down the pillars and he died in the process, right? That's their Samson. That's their last defense, killing themselves and everyone around them. So America is the evil empire. It is the evil empire because Americans do not have a religion, which means their morality comes from the laws emanating from Congress.
Congress?
Well, it's the equivalent of the Parliament. Of Parliament.
Okay.
I mean, it's like us trusting the MPs to make up a religion and laws for us, which is what is happening anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, are Muslims allowed to live in countries that permit lending interest? They are permitted to live in anywhere, really, and they do the best they can wherever they are, I guess.
They've been trafficked there. A lot of them have been trafficked there after the Americans, bombed the crap out of their country and trafficked them over to the West as cheap labor. So maybe they weren't even consulted, most of them.
Is Khalid going to apologize for lying about white people committing, committing more crime? He's still going on about that. I'm sure I posted a link, and you're not interested in the facts, Mr. Elliott, so that's fine. Claire, why do you platform this proven liar game? Next is what. In what ways do Muslims contribute to these endless wars? Contribute?
I don't understand the question either.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. hope we're not contribute like encourage. Sounds like you're encouraging the wars. They still want to carry on voting, 100% yes. They are defeated. It's incredible how much they still vote. I think she's quoting you, I guess, or whoever it is. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm saying
Quote
you're part of
is.
the problem if you still support democracy. And Elliot is supporting usury, and I'm saying, obviously the debt problem will be ended once you adopt Sharia, which would ban usury and allow individuals and governments to default on their debt.
Yeah. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Yes, you're hopefully, yes, Dr. Mengele. My takes are proven to be too spicy for screen time.
I think Joel is saying we haven't addressed his questions. We haven't answered his questions.
We tried, Joel. We tried. I think we gave it our best shot. Maybe you don't think the answer is good enough about usury, or yeah. Anyway, well, you get a lot of attention, Claire. So that's nice. Thanks everybody for listening. I try to keep it to an hour. No usury means no economy, which means no river of welfare benefits.
And the reintroduction of slavery, which is something I.
But okay, the alternative to usury is investment, which is a lot more stable way of maintaining the economy. So what usury is, we're going to give you money, and if you don't pay back, we're going to take something what's the word, pinned it on or something, like if you say, okay, you're going to pay interest on this house, and if you can't pay it, we're going to get your house for free, basically, which is a really messed up system. And the alternative is investment, which is intelligent or careful lending of money. Because in the usury system, you don't have to be careful about how you lend it. You lend it, they don't pay you back, you're going to get more back anyway. It's a win-win scenario for lenders. But with investment, the bankers have to be careful and say, okay, we're going to give you money because we want the economy to grow and we want you to make money, so we make money. But we're going to be careful about how if we're going to check that you can give us money back, but you only give us money back if you succeed in the thing that you are, the business, whatever it is. I'm not sure. Would you lend money? No, sorry. Could you invest money to buy a house? I don't know how that would work.
Well, I think what happens is that under the system of usury, the bank actually wants your business to fail, because if you borrowed money using your house as collateral, they can take your house. So they actually want your business to fail, so they can take your house in a rising market.
Yeah, and it used to be really cheap to buy a house. Like when my parents came to England, like it was like £5,000 for like a 4-bedroom massive house. Do you know about that? Like even here,
only cheap. A few thousand in a decent suburban house.
In London.
I knew people like that, boasting about how much they bought their house for, in the 70s, right? And it was under 10,000 or something.
Yeah. So inflation has made houses, the same house, worth about $1 million now, 5,000 to $1 million in about 50 years. Or maybe a bit more than that, more than 50 years. No, about 50 years, yeah. So, and houses are very cheap here. People don't borrow money really for houses. But one thing is inflating over here is people borrow money to buy cars, and cars are getting really expensive. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, Claire. Appreciate it. Hopefully chat to you next week.
Yes. Well, thank you for attracting so many hate watchers.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was me. I thought it was just your channel. But yeah, Cool.
No, I think at the max it was 7.
Having
or
a Muslim.
something.
Oh, okay. Having a Muslim has that effect. That's nice. Cool. Okay.
Yes,
I'm glad
and
I could help.
yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you
All
for
right,
coming.
take care.
I think Joel wants to have a chat, so I'll let him on. I think I did
Sure.
put the link. So yes, thank you for coming, Khalid.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
So Joel, are you coming? I'll wait a few minutes, or whoever wants to join me. Welcome. Or I'll end this stream, which is, how do you like this format of talking to Khalid? I think I prefer it. I prefer not knowing what we're talking about and letting our words wander with our wandering minds. Hello.
Hello, are we still live or what's happening?
We are indeed still live, so welcome.
Yeah. What's wait, so okay, well, can you address everything I've said in the chat so far or no?
Yes, so you don't think I've adequately answered your questions, but if you ask them again, maybe I'll understand them properly and try to answer them better. So which ones do you think I've not answered properly?
All right, well, let's talk about Japan. And my point was, in a cohesive society, which was for some reason not allowed to be spoken about via the previous Muslim that was talking. And Japan is cohesive, even though they have immense pressure and they are slaves to America. I'm not denying that.
Mm-hmm.
But their society is basically better than, and they have a very, very prevalent problem with an aging population.
Mm-hmm.
Their society is basically better than everyone else on Earth, right? I mean, they still maintain standards of maintenance and, well, cleanliness that is beyond what the West could ever think of right now.
Mm-hmm. Have you visited Japan?
Yeah.
Right. And have you visited the countries around it, China, Korea?
Well, I've been to Indonesia, which is insanely what's the word? Unordered. I mean, there's a lot of tensions within different groups in Indonesia, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it's an empire, so there will be ethnic tensions.
Yeah, I've been to Singapore. Singapore was kind of pretty good, but there was no freedom whatsoever.
I mean, nobody wants to live in Singapore. I mean, the retired Singaporeans just leave the moment they can and go to New Zealand or Malaysia, even though currently they complain about Malaysians because they are the cheap labor that Singapore needs to, to keep their economy running. And there are lots of Malaysians who say, yeah, we thought we were going to get paid lots, but the cost of living, oh my God, blah, blah, blah.
Well, the Malays are... See, I'm confused. Do you know much about the history? I mean, you must know about the history of South Asia, right? Indonesia, Malays, Vietnam, Cambodia. You know about this stuff?
I know a little bit,
even
but
Papua
I'm
New
probably
Guinea.
more informed about European history than I am about. But I mean, I can look it up. I mean,
But it's all been like very kind of mediocre the whole time. I could be wrong. Like maybe in Cambodia they built like Hindu temples one time, like thousands of years ago. But not much has gone on in all of these countries. I mean, maybe the Vietnamese, because they won the war, they may be more like kind of cool now and they're doing things. I'm not sure. I've never. When I went to Vietnam, it was interesting. There wasn't much kind of there wasn't really many glimpses of high civilization. They weren't like
well, remember, it's
building anything that was
Indochina.
interesting, but you
But it's
think China
Indochina.
doesn't have
Remember, it's
places?
Indochina. So there was once the Srijaya Empire, which is a marine empire, and the Majapahit Empire, and they were basically Hindu Buddhist empires that were superseded by Islam. So that's the potted history of empires of Southeast Asia.
And would you say? I mean, we don't need to go into. Can you hear me? By the way, I'm muted. I
Loud and
tried to
clear,
unmute.
loud and clear.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't see my. Oh, there we go. I see my little man in the circle.
Pulsating, throbbing.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I feel like the Muslim influence on generally on Asia was a bad thing. Is this not true? Or
Okay.
when I
let
say
me
a
explain.
bad thing, they didn't really do anything cool after that. Like it
I don't
just
know
kind of
about what's cool. I mean,
stagnated.
I guess different people think of have different ideas of what constitutes coolness. I like using empires to compare religions with. So I'm just saying, God, if he exists, has made things actually very easy for us because there are only 5 world religions. And we already know that Hinduism and Buddhism, well, they didn't, these Hindus and Buddhists haven't acquired much empire. So we can deduce from this fact that only organized religion is good at organized violence, right?
No,
Organized
no,
religions, Abrahamic religions.
wait. I understand what you're saying, and maybe they are good at organized violence. Okay, I'll give you that. But this is crazy. This idea that the Hindus did nothing. I mean, we're talking. Have you know about Angkor Wat, right? Have you visited Angkor Wat in
No,
Cambodia?
but
That is an
I visited.
incredible temple. I mean, that's like building the new. That's like building the 2 towers. The twin trade buildings
Mm-hmm.
in the fucking Middle Ages. I mean, that's kind of the sophistication of this building. I mean, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, I'm looking
are
at
you
it
just saying
now.
that doesn't matter, like because they weren't Muslims, or what are you saying?
What I'm saying is that you're now talking about technocracy, right? You're going to say, oh, they could do these wonderful things and these temple complexes, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, where are they now? The pyramids, we can just say, oh, but how did they do it with and we don't really know. Or, I don't know, the Easter Islanders and their, statues. We don't know. The point is that people can forget how to do a whole bunch of things. They can lose their skills.
I would
And then
say the
we can talk
reason
about the
why.
Micronesians and how they sailed from continent to continent and managed to colonize these Pacific islands and with their wonderful sailing and navigating skills. But they're now they're still basically natives in grass skirts, right? And under the control of the
Yeah,
American Empire. And we
yeah,
still, whether we
but
like Jews
okay.
or not,
Well,
we worship Jews,
right,
sadly.
well, we're getting into this again. No. So let's go back. to what makes great architecture possible, right? We're talking about mathematics. We're talking about highly skilled individuals. We're talking about stonemasonry. We're talking about an organized group of people that are heading towards one central goal that they care about as a society, right? These type of things. Okay. And what I'm saying is, when the Muslims took over these places that we've been talking about, this amazing ability to build things that were beautiful died, as far as I can tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong, or?
Well, there have been beautiful mosques built in other parts of the world, like in Iran and, Turkey. But I mean, obviously, you don't expect the colonies to have this sort of wonderful architecture. I mean, in the case of Britain, it's still the case that, Rome has the most beautiful European architecture, while, Scotland and
Hold on.
Ireland, I mean,
I
it's
mean, okay,
trash
maybe,
compared to
yeah, the
Rome,
Roman
right?
roads. I mean, maybe if we went back in time, yeah, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't deny that. Actually, that's actually a good point. That actually kind of like bolsters my point. So when you're saying organized religion comes into a society, then no longer we can build amazing,
I'm saying it
pantheons
doesn't
anymore.
matter. I'm really saying it doesn't matter. It's like, you as a people, you have this identity. Oh, we took over this and we took over that. And then it's like, and if we hold our identity, we can work out how people of the past, perform their amazing feats. We can work it out eventually, but we're taking over all this other stuff. I mean, Western technology, it's like, well, the Chinese are better at Western technology now. Western culture, actually there are quite a lot of non-white ballerinas and performers and musicians and players playing Bach and whatever, winning these competitions. It's like, in a way, the physical.
But it's all derivative. It's not creationary. It's all derivative. So you talk about these great ballerinas. You talk about these people that can play Bach well, right? Performatively, like they're very technically skilled and they can do that. But that's not creation. They didn't do a new Bach. They didn't do a new form of dance that's incredibly enticing, right? They just kind of reproduced it more technically, kind of, soundly or something. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not creation.
Well, if you're talking about artistic merit, I mean, I think there is a saying that, high art comes with decadent culture. So, the beginnings of the empire, it's all very nuts and bolts and who we're going to take over and who we're going to conquer and lords, boring stuff like that. And then once you, reach the zenith of your empire, then you can start enjoying the arts and fine dining and whatever. But the nuts
Okay,
and
but
bolts of empire is
you kind of
blood and
you kind
iron.
of got to my next point, which is the only way you can create is through struggle, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Jihad.
I mean, look at the ancient Greeks. Any great civilizations, they have to go through a period of struggle and conquering and fighting off,
And
invaders and
men to
so on
die
and so
for
forth,
it.
and then maybe creation will come from that, right? It's just like sex. There's a fight between the male and female animal, right? And it leads to a creation which is a child, and there's not going to be like a great person coming from like accidental or like what would I call it? Like sterile sex. That's the production of that is going to be some kind of monster or like
Well, yes. I mean, I'm
sick
talking about.
person, which is happening today. We
Well,
live in a
yes,
world of autism.
yes, because I think men who don't behave like men, who think like children, who think all I have to do is masquerade as a woman, and then I'll get all the feminine privilege, and feminine privilege is having more offers of sex, and I would like to accept. I think that is what is moving some men towards becoming transgender women. Or they think I just have to be metrosexual, have a six-pack, and then, a woman will accidentally fall onto my cock. I mean, that seems to be what they think. But actually, they have to strive. They have to, impress the woman, and she's going to be difficult to please. And then after you have sex with her, you kind of need to stay around and look after the children so that they will be influenced by, your ideas instead of just hers. But if you just pump and dump her, they will be entirely influenced by their experience of their mother without their father.
Yeah, or the state, and they will punish the man for making this kind of easy choice, right? Because if the man, impregnates a woman and doesn't stick around, doesn't do the hard yards, right, or doesn't even prevent the conception from happening because of different circumstances, he just wants to party, and it's a pump and dump situation, like you said. It's very kind of easy, and it's a social environment, and blah 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 blah. This is not like a what's the word for it? It's not a good way to initiate the situation where a man and woman can live and raise a child, because he's already proven that he can't deal with long-term challenges, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of patriarchy is that it is a married father that controls society. Leaders will be made up of married fathers, and this is really the principle of patriarchy. And if you don't continue this human tradition, how are you going to maintain, masculine control of your society? If you allow women to take over, the worst of women will take over, using the worst of men to maintain their power.
Which is, by the way, why Collective Dismal is going through his dismal fucking issues that he's dealing with, is because
he won't marry the mother of his child.
Yeah, he's just lifting weights, getting muscles in order to be attractive, which is everyone should go to the gym and lift weights. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but it is kind of gay if you just use that as an attractive force, with no kind of backup, no philosophical backup. And then you become this kind of man that just, seeks out higher status women, right? Which is, he's proven in his YouTube channel to do this. He will literally go out on a Tinder date with a woman who is HR manager of blah 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 blah, making who knows how much, $200,000 a year or something. Meanwhile, he's he's struggling to find a job. Yeah, it's a bad formula. I don't want to call out Collective Dismal too much here. I'm sure he has his reasons or whatever, but it's on the surface, it's bruh, you've given up your manliness, really, your own kind of essence, and you've become a slave to the matriarchy at that point, and your your child, and your, apparently he does have a child, and your ex or whatever she is suffering because of this, because of your decisions, right?
Well, yes. So the thing is, this culture of casual sex causes the men and women with the most potential to die childless or die bad parents. So what happens is, if you're smart and you're middle class and you're female, you're going to go to university, and once you go to university, you're going to delay marriage, right? And you stand a higher probability of dying childless. And if you are a Chad, you probably think, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? I'm just going to keep pumping and dump women until I'm too old for it. And also, there is this loss of potential for men and women who could actually become decent parents, but they decide to enjoy their culture of casual sex. So it's causing people to basically waste their lives and their opportunities. And obviously this
I
has got
think
to
it
change.
also. Sorry, you.
Well, I mean, as for Collective Dismal, I find he's quite dishonest. I've been trying to get hold of him. I did speak to him once, and he obviously doesn't want to speak to me again because, he keeps going on about eugenics, and I keep saying, marriage is eugenic. Face it, you may not want to do it, but, it is eugenic. The whole practice is to, make us think really carefully about who we're going to have sex with. That is the eugenic characteristic of marriage. And not just
in like an ideal society where there's not this kind of outside pressure of like some kind of ideology that defines how people act. I think naturally people are eugenic, right? They, especially women, they do at least, I think this is their nature. It has been for 10,000 years, not in the current age for some reason, but like you said, maybe it's education or university or something. But in general, they will go after the most kind of fit and successful man with the most status, and maybe there's this kind of new form of being like status orientated, right? These Twitch streamers that make like, I don't know how much they make, but they have a lot of subscribers and they make like, more than I make, right? And they're very kind of weak men. They just kind of sit in front of their computer all day. They're not kind of striving into the world or whatever. And sure, they do long hours and blah, 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 whatever. Okay. I'm just saying they're very kind of genetically mismatched when it comes to, the previous 5 millennia of history that produced these kind of folks. I don't know where I was going there, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, the point is that non-human animals kind of get it, that they're supposed to, have offspring if the opportunity arises, right? So they do it, without even thinking of it. But, humans who think too much of it will end up not doing it, and governments who don't address this problem will find that they won't really be in government for much longer. But I mean, the whole point of sexual reproduction and parenting is that I guess you want your group to remain in existence, whatever your race or religion or nationality, and this is what traditionally governments used to do. It would encourage marriage because it wants people to govern, right? But now that there's some sickness, some madness, some insanity in the minds of the matriarchy, and we are a matriarchy because we've basically inverted the social hierarchy of society. So married parents are the people right at the bottom, and transgender people have the law and the government to assist them in not supporting marriage, right? I mean, the reason why people don't want to perform their gender roles is because people don't need to perform their gender roles in order to attract a spouse, because People just decide to have sex on the basis of, visual attraction. And if that is all that you need to do to get a sex partner, which is all you want to do anyway, why would you be thinking in terms of attracting a long-term partner who is the other parent of your legitimate offspring? Of course, you're not going to think in those terms. And if the government is encouraging us to be gay and transgender, it's basically saying, we can't even be bothered to govern you. We want you to die childless, and if you're not dying quickly enough, we're going to, assist you in your suicide. Right? That is what we are being told in the West.
Yeah. No, I agree. What do you think about this kind of I don't know, thesis, idea, whatever, that the jolly heretic has about the right breeding faster than the left? Like, so his whole thesis is that eventually, because of genetic fitness and so on, in general, the American right wingers will outbreed the left wingers because, they are more genetically fit on average. And he has like a bunch of studies that kind of back this up in his like research or something. Do you think that's a truism, or is it like, I think it's kind of wishful thinking in my opinion, but like, because I think there's a lot of liberals that do breed successfully, and they kind of just pretend like they put a face to the ideology, and therefore they're accepted, right? And I think it is kind of a self-deception from their point of view, but they are very successful in terms of like families and so on, as far as I can tell, even though like some of them, like, okay, so one thing I looked at in New Zealand, right? New Zealand is very kind of woke. We know about what's her name? Horseface. I can't remember her name. Yeah, Lucinda. Yeah,
Jacinda.
Yeah, Jacinda Ardern, right? She's a product of one of these UN think tanks, by the way. So is Tony Blair and so on. But anyway, there is like a liberal kind of order in New Zealand, just like basically all of the West, right? But it's very kind of stark in New Zealand, because in New Zealand you have a lot of these kind of what the right wing call based people that like do construction and stuff like this, right? And so-called, they're having families and whatever. But but it turns out that the liberal New World Order in New Zealand are having like way more kids, like, 4.
It's probably the immigrants who are having the kids,
Well, wait. Well, let me finish. But it turns out like 2 or 3 of those are going to be, transgender, and so maybe their prospect for breeding in the future is limited or whatever. But anyway, so back to the jolly heretic. What do you think about this idea that, ultimately the religious and the right wingers and so on will breed out the liberals? I don't think that's. I think he's wrong. What do you think?
Well, I think if you're having children, there is a theoretical possibility that they might do something good in the future, right? Because at least they'll be part of your genes remaining in existence. What's the point of saying, I'm so clever and I'm so high IQ and I'm so rich and I'm going to die childless and that's the end? So I guess you won't leave any kind of legacy behind. You won't be passing any of your high IQ genes behind, and you're letting the low IQ who don't think too much about these things take over. And how wise is that kind of thing? So I think all the religions in the world that you might have heard of support marriage. And I'm saying organized religions do it better because they're stricter about matters of sexual morality, because they're able to classify all these, sexual offenses like sodomy and fornication and adultery and incest and bestiality. And then they can talk about, which ones should be allowed and which ones forbidden and how it's punished. And once you get there, you think in a legalistic way, and that allows you to organize your thinking and perhaps your empire if you're organized enough to acquire one. But sadly for white people, is that they've forgotten everything about that, and I guess maybe they could be forgiven for not knowing about it because it's not taught to them at school, because their matriarchy doesn't want them to know anything about that. The matriarchy wants them to obey the law of the land, and it can be anything that they want, right? And they're basically inverted morality. They've turned it upside down. So the trans person who spends his or her time masquerading as a member of the opposite sex, wasting the time of any person who might think, oh, I think I found myself a potential spouse, and then it turns out that they're not going to be able to produce children because they're the same sex. I think men do expend a whole lot of energy and resources on wooing women. And that's why they get so murderously angry when they realize that the person that they've wooed is, a fake woman and a man like themselves, born with the same male sex organs. And the government is with their gender recognition certificates, and we're just helping that person tell a lie to waste the energy of heterosexual men who want to be fathers.
Yeah, no, I agree. But it's interesting that, like in Australia and New Zealand, right? We have this big construction industry, especially in New Zealand recently, because it turns out everyone wants to, from America, these big, American millionaires want to go to New Zealand because it's beautiful and, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a massive construction industry in New Zealand. And a lot of these guys are making big money, even if you're even if you're just a tradie, you're doing like roofing or something, concreting, right? These kind of low status jobs. Turns out these guys are getting laid because they're built, they work physically, right? You have this kind of liberal American woman turning up. She's kind of confused about her own biology, and yet she still finds these New Zealand traders extremely attractive, right? Physically and so on, because they work and they're built and so on. And so, we still, they still have this kind of, we still have this biological, what am I trying to say? Force that will never kind of, well, in New Zealand's case, it will never be kind of extinguished, purely because of the matriarchy or whatever. Because a lot of like matriarchal women, actually, if they're truly straight and they're not like fully indoctrinated into the university, gender studies course or whatever, they will actually kind of succumb to these manly men, right? And so, well, at least at least I hold out hope in New Zealand. That's
I think so, because people are just attracted to somebody that's different to them, right? It's like, oh, I find him so attractive. I don't know why, but you're not like anyone I know, blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing. And also men find very feminine women attractive, and they, it arouses all their protective instincts. And, obviously they're not going to find women who try to be men like them at all attractive. They will just resent them. And the same thing with women, with men trying to pretend to be women. I mean, come on. So we're all being given the wrong instructions about how to live a happy life, because I think the greatest tragedy of women is, they realize when their eggs are dried out that there's nothing more than, becoming a mother and a housewife that they would like to do in their lives after having tried out all the wrong things. But it's too late.
Yeah.
And I just, don't know why the matriarchy is, not admitting this. Perhaps it's because people find it hard to admit their mistakes and they fear punishment and anger and whatever, and that maybe that's why they're so desperate to silence other views, because they can't actually argue against it, right? So maybe
Well,
they just let people
I think it's
killing
just
people.
social. I think it's just social pressure. So you have these university professors that are either gay or like women, right? And they have these cliques, and women are very kind of concerned with social status, and a lot of women try to bring other women down, in their social groups. If they're attractive or they're succeeding at life or whatever, they will try to pull them into the group, back into the malaise of liberalism or whatever it is, right? And so these women will be pressured socially to, not engage in, well, I guess you would say, genetically advantageous situations, right? And I think,
so if a woman
yeah,
is already married but has divorced female friends, these divorced female friends will want her to join them and encourage her to divorce her husband. But this is how group dynamics work anyway. You want to,
yeah. But what I'm
you want
saying
to
is
recruit.
it's like turbocharged in university, right? Because even if they're not getting laid, these women will, still socially climb to the point where, it's like, it's like I have a girlfriend, but she lives in a different town, right? This happened in the 90s, in the 80s, and so on, where men were like, it was socially cool to have like a girlfriend or whatever. So you would make up like a story because, you didn't actually have a girlfriend at your school or whatever, right? And in the university female environment, I think these women actually kind of pretend that they have, a boyfriend, an online boyfriend, or, this Chad kind of construction worker. I think they make up stories, right, in order to further their social kind of status because they're a bit different or whatever. But I don't think it's like, I don't think it's reflective of actual, statistics in terms of breeding and so on. I think it's just kind of this, I don't know. I
Status. It's
could
a
be wrong,
status
but
thing.
yeah.
I have
But
a
I'm
boyfriend
interested
or I
to
have a
hear from
husband.
the shepherd who's here. But sorry, you continue. I'll mute myself for a second.
Hi, Shepherd. Did you want to speak and tell us about your pastoral power idea? If not, we'll just carry on talking. Okay, we've given him a chance. You can chime in any time, but if you don't want to speak and you just want to put yourself on display, carry on. But we'll just carry on with what we were saying about status and the appearance of having a long-term partner. Because, I think for men, I mean, they will always seek, a female partner to validate them. It would be, well, I've managed to attract a woman and she's my wife and the mother of my children, blah, blah, blah. And that's better than being, the eternal bachelor who's probably gay. It's even in the 21st century, people do think like that.
But yeah, I think equally, like the woman that is kind of like, well, goth or whatever, like she's kind of alternative. She has like a nose ring. You know, I'm sure this is kind of this is kind of, you know, part of their social malaise, right? In the universities, you need to have like a, you know, no bang, short haircut or whatever, because you're not like trying to overly suggest that you're actually a female, right? I mean, it must be a struggle to be a young female in university. It must be insanely psychologically taxing, right? But I think, you know, if you're kind of an alternative or whatever, you're kind of you're constantly dropping hints to these other socially liberal people in your circle that, oh no, I you know, I met this kind of, you know, construction worker. You know, he was kind of, you know, completely dumb and you know, didn't understand the world like we do, and you know, it was very kind of hot. You know, he had these big muscles, and you know, or even like the full edgy goth woman would say, like, you know, he was kind of um you know, a Nazi, and you know, I that kind of excited me. You know what I mean? Like this sort of stuff. I think this goes on. Like I wouldn't doubt that dynamic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, or you know, some people just pretend to be already spoken for because they don't want, you know, random men hitting on them. You know, like, I'm already married, I'm happily married, you know, don't throw yourself at me and don't pester me for sex, you know, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
because like probably they're dealing in their constant like university world with these like soy boys who are constantly trying to hit on them that like are, you know, completely unmanly, and they should have like gone to the gym once in their lives. You know what I mean? But they're like, you know, they have a belly and like no arms. You know what I mean? Like they must have to deal with that on a daily basis, or they're trans, but they're kind of like tricking. They think they're like being smart and like you know, sophisticated for being trans or something, and then they'll try and like try it on in a nightclub, and you know, man, it must be horrible to be to be a woman in this environment, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, ultimately, people just, you know, need to perform their gender roles. If they want to get married, they have to perform their gender roles, because the whole point of it is, you know, it's like, you know, I'm female and I'm so pretty and I'm so kind and I love children and I'm so good at cooking and sewing and cleaning and decorating the house and making it pretty and nice, you know. And the men will, you know, I'm so tall, I'm so high status, high IQ, I've got a great job, blah, blah, blah. And that's how, you know, members of the opposite sex, you know, signal to each other, right? And now if you don't need to have, you know, to marry in order to have sex, then it'll just be all about appearances. And this is, you know, obviously the problem, right? I mean, you know, but the thing is, I mean, the government thinks, well, you know, we don't need these white people who won't breed anymore. In fact, we don't want them to breed because they're so, you know, they have so many issues, right? We just want to give them UBI, and we know they'll accept it. And if they just accept UBI, they'll just spend their entire lives playing video games, not breeding, and they'll become extinct. And that's what we want, right? That I think is, you know, the hidden agenda, but you know, behind UBI. It will trick a lot of people into thinking, well, that's all I want to do. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have children. It's too scary. I'll just happily lead a life, maybe have a cat or a little dog, and that's enough for me.
Oh
Maybe
God, it's so depressing. So, do you think
wake up to it.
UBI will be a thing? Like, do you think it's actually going to like happen? Because I think Like, honestly, I don't know. I think UBI is kind of this like this hook that's dangled in front of
A lot
people.
of
Like
men are going to accept it. And a
I
lot of
think,
men,
well,
it's like, okay,
I think a lot of
you
women
get
as
free
well.
call.
Yeah,
People,
but as a woman, like, would you choose? Okay, here's your two options. You can make money on OnlyFans, but you have to show, your bits, or you can get UBI. And I think a lot of women will choose UBI as well. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, and they will, eventually become extinct because they'll think, in my little life, I don't want to marry or have children. It's too much like hard work. Who wants to bring children in a world like this? The usual excuses trotted out. Well, the more primitive people from their primitive cultures in your country already will think, we need to breed. Of course, we need to breed, or we'll just be absorbed into mainstream culture. And
Yeah.
but I think the whole idea of marriage, should actually appeal to everyone who wants to remain in existence. The immigrant who's just arrived, they're actually invested in the country. It's like, we didn't just come here to be absorbed into the mainstream culture. We want to keep our identity. We want to be, I don't know, little Muslims and little whatever people, wherever they came from, still walking around in this country that they've
Chinatown,
immigrated to.
Chinatown, and the main street of the trading hub of your state, your city, right? State your city in Australia, New Zealand, or even America. There will be a Chinatown there, right?
Yes, because Chinese identity is quite distinctive with its, language and people and blah blah blah. And you're talking about people. I don't know if you've been following the Chagos Islanders. Basically, the British. Okay, the an island not far off the East African coast, and the British basically, kicked them off the island and took over their island as a military base and put them in the Maldives, which is an island, which is an independent Indian republic. I mean, it's basically run by Indians. So they're all
This,
there now.
this was back in like what was we're talking like the mid 1800s or something like this, or
Well, anyway, I'm a bit vague about that. But I only mention that because I met a few of them recently in some kind of dissident right meeting. So a bunch of them came along and explained what the problem was. But these kind of brown-skinned African Indian-looking people, they don't really have a distinctive religion. So they may look African or Indian, but they speak French Creole. I asked what their religion was, and the Catholic, right? So, it's all, and I think basically they were a stolen shipment of slaves when, Britain operated piracy and stole, other people's slaves and whatever. It's a bit complicated. But basically, so these Chagos Islanders complain, like, we've been shipped into the is it the Mauritius or the Maldives? I forget now. But anyway, they say, we're treated like third-class citizens. Oh, yes, they have a university, but we never get there because we're basically treated like crap. And so they complained, and eventually the British government said, well, come and live in England then. And it's like, okay, most of them are in England now. But England has, sorry, Britain has agreed a 99-year lease with the Mauritius. Is it Mauritius or Maldives? Anyway, and so it's for another 99 years, and these Chagos Islanders cannot go back. So they'll probably live and die in England and lose their identity altogether. And this is really the danger of not having your own distinct language and your own distinct religion. And I fear this is what's going to happen to the Chagos Islanders, whom nobody cares about, obviously, because they don't quite fit in properly anywhere. They're not properly African, they're not properly Indian, they're not properly British, they're not properly Catholic or French. But, for the Chinese, they can, because people sort of think they know, what it is to be Chinese and Chinese food and, blah, blah, blah. But
yeah, so, well, it's interesting that, okay. Yeah,
and they're trying to use their British identity.
These groups around the world. But are they not like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. So why do you think like people don't care about them? Is it because they're a product of, a clashing empire situation where, they were transported and they didn't quite like, I guess my question is like, did they have an original seed of an individual kind of race or group that they came from, or was it just kind of was it like what's another example of the thing you're talking about, like well, Brazil, right, or a lot of other South Americans, they're kind of this product of great empires going in and doing things and mixing people around and destroying native groups that existed in the Amazon and so on, and now they don't have like an origin story anymore. Is that their kind of vibe, or?
Well, I think, most people don't care about, other people, but I only told that story to illustrate how important it is to have your own distinct religion and language. In fact, E. Michael Jones said, your language is also part of your identity. And more recently, somebody on Substack said, your beliefs are also your identity. But, obviously, the many badges of identity we all have, like, our sex, our age, our nationality, our religion, our language, blah, blah, blah. And, we just rely on, whichever one we want to assert at any given, moment or circumstance. But, as rational people, I think we're all kind of forced to say that, if you want our group to survive, we have to support the institution of marriage. It doesn't matter where we come from. It's, the logic of the whole thing, because we're all going to die. So we need to replace ourselves as we die. And obviously, if we think anything of our group identity, as, Indians, Australians, Americans, whatever, we kind of want that thing to carry on. Or you can just sort of narrow it down to, okay, we are the people who marry and have children. I mean, if you want to make it universal and generic, we are the people who accept that in order to keep our group in existence, we have to marry and have children and parent them properly, and so that they grow up understanding their history and traditions, and and can speak their own language properly and understand their own history and blah blah. That's basically it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, it's kind of interesting because I think, like, the majority of the well, not the majority of the West, but like a lot of people would consider what's happening to the Palestinians as some kind of horrible thing, right? And they would, which equally I think that as well. But my point is, like, we consider these people groups important, or even like, look at the Japanese. Like, a lot of Western folk look at the Japanese as some kind of ideal, right? In some kind of antiquated way. Okay, I don't know
I think that
if they are doing well now or whatever. Let me finish. So when it comes to this group that you're talking about, it's interesting that they don't have so much empathy for such people, right? That don't have a distinct, like, culture or philosophical background or architectural style, or they haven't quite, impacted on the world like the Japanese have, for instance. Okay, even if it's within Japan itself. So I guess my point is, like, it's interesting that we care about people that do have traditional values in terms of, like you said, marriage and so on, but it's more about their impact on the world and their kind of ability to create and maintain their society for as long as it goes, right? So a lot of Australians don't consider like Chinatown to be like some kind of ultimate ideal, right? They're not looking at like the Central Market in like Sydney or whatever, and the Chinatown across the road, which is a thriving, Chinese, market in
Well,
itself.
I complain if they haven't got a Chinese takeaway to order food from, maybe.
No. The point is, they have so many Chinese takeaways that they don't even care anymore. But my point is, like, well, what was my point? My point was, it's just interesting how humans in general look at these cultures as something to, consider important and worthy of protection, even the Palestinians. And maybe it's just because the Palestinians are so numerous. I'm not sure what the Palestinians have done. Maybe it's just like this eternal kind of victim status throughout the ages or whatever. Maybe that's their kind of go-to thing that Westerns care about. But what I'm saying is they don't care about, like you said, like these transportation of people that have, nowhere else to go. Maybe it's just the numbers. Maybe it is just the number of the people.
I mean, going back to the Jews, it's sort of like, well, nobody likes them. They've got the most difficult religion in the whole wide world, but they remain in existence. I mean, you can say God protects them, or there's some sort of status involved in being a Jew, right? That makes people want to be Jews, even though they're not, or they're not following the rules properly. They still want to assert their Jewish identity because they sort of sense like, oh, we are the world's most ancient and powerful tribe, and even if we're just secular Jews, we can kind of bask in the reflected glory of Moses receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, and oh yeah, and the Christians taking our scripture from us and worshipping a Jew, and oh yes, and these Muslims, and worshipping our God. There's all this sort of narrative that I think these different groups use to raise their status. And
So
how
what
can they
you're
raise their
saying is,
status?
let me finish. So what you're saying is it's status then and its impact on the world. So one thing you didn't mention, right? The Jews have cracked the magical, system which is underlying, I would say, Western civilization, which is basically Kabbalah. And we can go into like this stuff, but you don't want to go there because
Well, we
it's all
can,
very
but I'm just
occultic,
telling
all
you
very
that most
complicated.
Jews do.
What I'm saying is, let me finish. They have a a financial, what would you say, cornerstone, to use a Christian term, that has, allowed the pyramid that they live in to keep standing all of this time, right? And that's a form of magic that they have succeeded at, right? And to be fair to them, they have never at any point given up on this magical system. And we still, even Muslims, we still in the rest of the world flounder around, and we don't have a philosophical backing that is, that is reliant on basically, the magic of money to allow us to succeed in the way that the Jews have, right?
I mean, how can you tell if the Jews are successful? I think most of all their power is because Gentiles give it to them, right? Because if you think of what the American Empire is doing, it has made Israel sacred to the American Empire, and Jews are but the mascots of the American Empire. Because if you make Israel sacred, then obviously you're going to have to make Jews a little bit high status compared to, your own people, right? It's like, we are the good guys. We protect Jews from being exterminated by anti-Semites and Nazis, and we're going to look after them because we're good, which is, basically the foundational myth of post-war America. It's like, never again, because otherwise Americans are just left with, we kick people around because we've got nukes and the best weaponry of all, and the biggest navy in the whole wide world, which is, not so nice, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, let me just put this out there. So I think their power lies within either it's money magic, it's the ability to create nothing out of something, or something out of nothing, sorry, or it's this ability to tell stories and make the stories convincing. Okay, we look at Hollywood and so on.
Yes.
So these are two forms of magic, right? They're two forms of Kabbalah and occultism and magic. And they have been more successful. Let me finish. They've been more successful with that than, which is basically a LARP, this Western kind of occultism, which is like, demonology and so on. But we haven't kind of mastered the ability of psychological, magic over time. Okay, and I think that's the great, the great gift from God that they were able to capitalize on. No.
Well, yes, because if you look at how Christianity and Islam developed, they always go back to the God of Israel, the Moses, the laws, right? The laws God gave to Moses. And obviously the Christians are saying, oh, new covenant, blah, blah. And the Muslims are saying, we have the better revelation. But all the stories in the Quran refer to previous stories in the Torah, right? Adam and Eve and Moses and, Canaan and blah, blah. So they all have to go back. And logically, Islam would be not an Abrahamic religion if it, talked about other stories of other gods, right? So, but the fact is, the Abrahamic God is the most powerful being conceivable, and because nobody can think, oh, there's something more powerful than the Abrahamic God. Nobody has thought of any, a more powerful being. So that is already top of the tree. So the only way human groups can compete with each other is like, well, we have better access to God and heaven than the other lot, right?
Yeah.
And this is basically.
Sorry to interrupt. So do you think Nietzsche was right then when power? If we think of power as in like, the ultimate God or the ultimate kind of being that wields power, right? The numerogram, there's other occultic terms for this idea of an ultimate being, right? The undying and so on. Is this where the Greeks were, they built their own cage in some ways because they never quite like got there in philosophical terms. This conception of an ultimate being. Is it so? Are you saying that's by luck of luck of the luck of history or so on? This is what the Semitics stumbled on, and so therefore manipulation was easy at that point because they had all the answers, i.e., like Nietzsche's will to power type thing.
Well, I mean, the Greeks were, pagans. So although they had a kind of hierarchy of gods, because Zeus was basically king of the gods, right? And he had his family living on Mount Olympus. He had a wife who, was always scolding him for having sex with more
he was
women.
he was never like the ultimate god. I mean, you had Kronos, and I think there was another one above Kronos or whatever, like the creator of the world or something. But that was never like put forth in Greek mythos as being like, we need to aim for this ultimate like being or whatever. That was never really. It was always about like the stories of how he like, when we talk about Zeus, he was always kind of almost like whipped by his wife, metaphorically, and so on. Like, he was like basically an amazing human, but he wasn't quite, like the ultimate thing. And I guess like that's points to Islam, right? Like Allah is meant to be, all, whatever it is, right? The ultimate
All-knowing,
power center. Yeah.
omniscient, omnipotent, etc. Yes, because the thing that we know from the mythologies of other countries is that there's always anthropomorphism, right? So they'll think of God as, time, like Father Time with a beard, an old man, it's always a man or a woman. And then of course, then a woman will have a husband, or a man will have a wife and children who are not fully under his control. And so I guess the next level up is something you can't see, who's absolutely mysterious, but who is in complete control all the time, eternally. To make it harder to imagine anything more powerful. But going back to Greek mythology, the beginning of Greek mythology was basically the Titans, right? The Titans were, Kronos and creation, and really physical gods, Poseidon, god of the ocean. All these ideas were
and they were
physical
constantly
things.
struggling. Yeah, they were constantly struggling against like the old ones, or whatever they call them in Greek philosophy. This kind of old pantheon that kind of was in control, but now they don't have control so much because the Titans are like literally
the Titans had to die in order for the Olympians to reign, because the story was that Zeus's father wanted to eat him up, because they realized that Zeus would overthrow his own father of material things, right? Because the Olympians basically represented ideas, like Aphrodite, the goddess of love and persuasion, Mars, the god of war, Athena, the goddess of wisdom. So these Olympian gods represented abstract ideas, which are obviously very useful politically to governments all over the world. I mean, because it is with these abstractions that we exercise moral reasoning and try to solve
So
problems.
I mean, the ultimate god of like Greek thoughts, at least like after Homer, when Plato and so on got involved in philosophy, is basically logic, right? So this is where I think sorry, I'm going into philosophy here, but I think this is where the Eastern Christians. What are they called? The Orthodox Christians. I think this is what they follow now. Is kind of this. They don't say it, but basically they worship logic, right? So they say that we cannot communicate with each other if the universe is not ordered. So it's either you're a nihilist and you think we're all making, small mouth noises, as Terence McKenna said, where there's an illusion of meaning and understanding. This is kind of the nihilist view, or the universe is ordered and everything makes sense and we're communicating now, and we're not like just saying random noises into the void, right?
Yes, so we're capable of understanding each other by using words which represent ideas. And obviously we have to correctly communicate what we mean, or we will be misunderstood, and then
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the Orthodox Christians in, well, I don't know, deep Russia or whatever, maybe they get into some other weirder shit. I've heard some stories about these monasteries, but in terms of like the Orthodox Christian view, the mainstream Orthodox Christian view is basically they worship logic. They worship the laws of the universe, right?
Logos, as they would say.
Well, yeah, Logos, yeah. Even E. Michael Jones kind of, preaches this idea, right? But this isn't kind of it's not a very alluring idea for the average citizen. It's not very kind of, it's not sexy. It's very kind of, it's almost like cold science, right? It's like science fiction from the 1920s or something. It's very kind of.
But that's why people need these stories, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, you want stories? Go and look at the Bible, and read about Adam and Eve and all the rest of it. So it's already there. But basically, the correct conception of God is like He made laws to protect us. Yes, and He is supposed to be benevolent. So He wants the best for us, and that's why we should follow His laws. And He will record good and punish evil, and make it logical for us to believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished. Because without the Abrahamic God, who's going to reward good and punish evil? No one, nothing.
Yeah. No, I agree, but the most like kind of, well, especially for Western people, is the most kind of seductive version of storytelling is a little bit saucy. It's pushing the boundaries. It's Shakespeare. It's the Greek. It's Homer, right? It's the Icelandic sagas, right? So it's all very kind of, there's some moral lessons, but are they actual moral lessons? This kind of stuff. It's like very kind of seductive and sexy, right? So you have that, and then on the other hand, you have this, Eastern Orthodox kind of view where it's all about logic and so on.
I don't think they're particularly logical because they're Christian and they worship the Trinity. And that's a problem, because it's not logical to believe that Jesus and God are the same person.
Well, I don't know I'm not sure about your logic on that one, but I will say there is a very seductive kind of message there, which is God has to come down and become a man and suffer like a man. In order to really understand
we don't need
that.
to believe in that to get to heaven. We don't need to.
No, I know they say this, but it's very seductive, is it not? Like God Himself reincarnates as a human. I mean, that's incredibly beautiful, like poetically, right?
Well, it's anthropomorphism, to use a long word, and this is again, you're just going back to Greco-Roman culture when, people did believe that gods, would come down and occasionally have sex with, mortal women. And a lot of Greek
which is
mythology
fine.
is full of
This is
semi-divine
what I'm
offspring.
saying. But this is what I'm saying. This is why the Trinity works in the Western mind, right? This is why I'm telling you this story, right?
Well, okay, it's a story, and if it's true, then people would want to believe in it. It's just that we sort of know that most Westerners they don't even believe in God. So asking them to believe that Jesus is God is asking a cripple to go the extra light year. So they're not going to do it. And this causes problems because, it's only when you have convictions, if you think, I have principles, I'm going to follow them, whether I'm rewarded or punished, and I will speak truth to power, and you know, be a martyr for my cause or whatever. Then people are afraid because if you think of Army 1 and Army 2, Army 1 doesn't believe in God. They're all a bunch of atheists, and they think this life is the only life. And then you get Army 2 who believe in the afterlife and have been told that they're going to be rewarded if they sacrifice their lives in battle against the enemy. Who's going to fight more bravely, right? And this, I think, has always been the logic of making people believe in God and believing in the afterlife. I mean, the Hindus and Buddhists do, but not
Okay,
just
well, wait. So you're saying the side that wants to fight and die will win? Is that what you're saying?
they'll fight more bravely. I mean, the
Sure,
Vikings believed
but,
in
but
Valhalla.
let me finish. Yeah. Well, okay, you mentioned Valhalla. But so in my mind, when you were saying that, you were talking about Muslims and their
Christians and
promise of the
Jews.
afterlife, right?
Yeah, anyone who believes in the Abrahamic God would have to believe in the logic of heaven and hell, where they
But
will
an
be punished.
equally powerful myth is like, Valhalla and the what are they called? The Banshee? No, what are they called? The fucking things that come down on the battlefield and lift you up into Valhalla.
Valkyrie?
Yeah, Valkyries.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not an equally powerful myth? Like, I'm not sure what your point is here.
Well, I mean, the point is that the Vikings are no longer believe in the Nordic pantheon, and they've been Christianized, right? So it must mean that the more powerful god has vanquished the less powerful god.
But my question is, and okay, we understand the power of Muslim influence on the world and success, right? The Muslims have been extremely successful for a long time now, right? We can argue about Middle Ages and so on, but anyway, and the Vikings were only successful for however many years, like 200 years or something.
Yeah,
Right?
and then they Christianized, right? Like the Normans, they were
Well, yeah, but okay.
as
So
well.
let me finish. So, okay. So why did the Vikings fail? Are you saying they didn't have a strong enough myth to keep going, or what was the downfall of the Vikings? Like, why did they convert to Christianity?
Well, I think it was the Roman Empire, right? I mean, there was a reason why Constantine the Great decided to abandon the imperial cult of Rome, that required Romans to worship their deceased emperors.
Also, I think it was okay. I agree with you there, but also it was Constantinople and the Eastern Orthodox Christians where they would hire Vikings. They were called the Varangian Guard. I'm sure you're aware of this. And some of them, well, a lot of them did convert because of the sheer beauty of the Hagia Sophia and the choirs that they would sing in in that church, which is now a mosque.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just be overwhelmed with beauty and kind of aesthetically pleasing sounds and visuals, right? And this is one of the main reasons why a lot of Varangian Guard who were previously pagans converted to Eastern Orthodox Christianity, because the sheer overwhelming force of aesthetics. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Creating a
Well,
spiritual
I'm not sure what my
experience.
point was there, but it's something to consider, right?
Yeah, so if you have very beautiful surroundings and very beautiful music, your spirits are lifted into thinking you encountered the divine or something of that nature.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and then what that will make you convert to the religion that this experience represents. I understand that, and that's
Which is,
why.
I think it even happened in England. Like, I think some of these Vikings that worked with, what's his name, Alfred the Great, right? Who actually used Vikings in his armies at some points, but if they converted, I think the ritual of baptism in a river and some of the Roman structures that still exist, like the bathhouses and so on. I think Alfred presented civilization to, and when I say civilization, I mean like a higher form of interacting with the world. When I say higher form, I mean like it was like architecture. When we boil it down to like logical things, it was architecture, it was like ritual, it was like physical kind of trials and so on, which, yeah, I
Alfred
think
was a
this stuff
literate
is like
man.
more, well, what I'm saying is I think this stuff is more kind of overwhelming. This is a reason why like a lot of people on the internet now are looking for more and more extreme things, like Nazism or alt rightism or whatever, right? It's kind of a ritual again, right? It's going into a forum and thinking that you're important because of what you say and so on and so forth, and people like encourage you to do, like there's this thing in America. What are those mega churches called? The mega churches in America, they're
Mainly
evangelicals, right?
Pentecostal, right?
Yeah, Pentecostal evangelicals. They talk about these people that convert. They talk about love bombing. So they go into these churches, and everyone around them is like saying that they are beautiful. They're a unique soul, and blah 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 blah. Right? This kind of again, it's the same thing with like transgenderism. Right? You're a unique flower. Okay. So I think there's like a fundamental thing within human psychology. I think you need to be kind of wanted by the rest of the community, and if that doesn't happen, then it's kind of like what else is there?
But okay, I'm really interested in the political and the psychological, right? So the political is like, you have a country to run, you want national unity, so you have to choose a belief system that gives an attractive narrative to your people. And if they're very low status and oppressed, you probably won't get round to changing this belief until you've fought a successful civil war, or some kind of war anyway, to get rid of your foreign invaders or whatever. And then the story will inevitably be these brave men who decided to fight oppression, and they got rid of the enemy, and they changed the rules, and everything's better now. And this is basically all the stories of any religion, I think.
Mm. What
And
I'm saying though, I think I've said this to you before, but men don't act on like logic, right? They need to be inspired, and
Yes.
I think it's mainly through ritual and physical, like, presence of, a thing. And your, secular Quranism logic is kind of turning Western men off, because it's like, it's not very exciting, right?
Well, I mean, it's a solution. If you want some, great speeches, there should be, Western men around capable of turning this system into something that is inspiring for Western men. I mean, I just don't see, really what the problem is. Like, we are wrong, and now we're gonna do a U-turn, and I'm going to be the one doing it, and blah blah blah. I mean, I really don't think it's that hard. It's just that, sadly, after Charlie Kirk, they're all afraid of being shot in the throat. And this is another display of cowardice and, dare I say it, of stupidity, because, you have to become important enough for them to want to assassinate you, right? So I think, if you're some, average YouTuber, they're not going to be interested. They might be interested if you become more powerful, but, currently all we have to do is discuss the nature and purpose of religion. Not even the religion that I have in mind, but just talking generally about why people in different countries of the world have their religions, and what it's for. And if you don't have one, and I don't think anyone can deny that the West does not really have a religion. I mean, insofar that it has anything that could be called a religion, it's feminism,
Yeah,
and it
no,
is just.
I agree. I think the West is suffering from spiritualism. So we're basically kind of stuck in like a constant kind of what's the word when you're a teenager? What's the time when you're a teenager? It's
Adolescence.
adolescence, right? Yeah. The West is like constantly adolescent. And to be honest, there's no way that, unless, well, even if there was like a full revolution, and there was like some kind of, complete hierarchical Muslim order, I think at that point, even still, Western men would be trying to claw out. They would be trying to find something that is not, this kind of suppressive system on their psyche or whatever.
Well,
Like,
may I just interject here about the
wait,
taboos that
wait. I'll
surround.
tell you why. Okay. So one reason is the Magna Carta in England, right? This idea that every man, every landowner can have a say in his like world, and be, every house is a castle. This kind of, it's still an Australian idea, by the way. There's a movie called The Castle. Anyway, so there's this idea of freedom, right, which is completely nebulous, and I kind of hate it on its face, but it has an historical kind of backing, the yeoman and so on, right? So even and okay, that's England. Let's look at Germany, right? The HRE. Okay, they had slaves and so on, whatever. There was a massive hierarchy and so on and so forth. But the HRE, the Holy Roman Empire, it was so split into different territories, different kind of ways of, a million states of being, at least, you know, in the Western men's mind. Okay, even they had an emperor on top and blah blah blah, whatever, right? That it was still the most divided and recorded and, you know, what would you say, fucking freedom kind of orientated thing within a feudal system that could ever exist, right?
Sorry, can you
And
say
this
that
is
sentence again? I kind of lost track of what you were discussing.
because you were fucking typing shit.
But it was quite a long sentence. I think you've
All right.
forgotten yourself.
Well, no. So the HRE, right? It was the most divided in terms of like duchies and territories within an empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we've ever seen on Earth. At least it was the most recorded, you know, and mapped empire, right?
Okay, so the Holy Roman Empire was, well, apparently it was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, right?
Well, that's the whole point, right? So it was the most, what I'm saying, it was the most freedom that men could, you know, what's the word? It was the most freedom that men could enact within their environment under an empire, under a hierarchy. And the same thing in England, by the way. I mean, you had the yeoman
Sorry, I
farm.
don't understand your point. Are you saying that the Holy Roman Empire was a bastion of personal liberty? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, to a certain extent. And it was also a reflection of, I guess you would say, what's the word when you hire people for their skills? What's that? Mediocrity? No. What's it? Yeah, sorry?
Meritocracy?
Meritocracy, yeah.
But the Holy Roman Empire ended. I think it was Napoleon who ended the Holy Roman Empire, wasn't it? So it was defeated by liberalism.
So what you're saying is, so what you're saying is because it was defeated, it wasn't successful. What I'm saying is, no, okay, fair enough. Amazing. But what I'm saying is, if the whole world was a Holy Roman Empire, then that wouldn't be a thing, right? So it was only through outside force that the Holy Roman Empire was not successful anymore. Yeah. But if we can make a society where, and I know the enemy to to your whole world view is libertarianism. That's the ultimate evil, right?
No? I'm actually saying that liberty is what we ought to enjoy after all the necessary laws are in place. And I guess God knows what all the necessary laws are. And this has already been communicated. And I guess the people who don't like the idea won't even read the book to judge for themselves whether the laws are in fact unnecessary or stupid or something. So that's my greatest hurdle. You know, people just say, "Oh, we don't want the religion of these people from these shithole countries." Right? Look at them. You know, we piss all over them. Why would we want their stupid religion? You know, that kind of idea.
And but to your point, they are being defeated by these shithole countries. Day in, day out, they are losing, right? These are, these Tommy Robertson folks or whatever, these right-wing chuds in the UK, thinking that they will defeat, the ultimate evil of Islam, but they never actually do anything that's successful. I mean, they keep getting outbreeded and out-churched and out-mossed and out-communitied and everything else. They're losing at such a level where it's laughable to even say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's really, a question of, demographics. But did you know that even in India, the Muslim birth rate in India is higher than the Hindu birth rate in India? And this is what is really rattling the Hindus, because the Hindus, like the Christians, don't really take their religion seriously. It's just a cultural affiliation, right? I mean, there is a huge difference between, Hindus and Buddhists basically saying, we only go to the temple when we're feeling worried about something. While, for organized religions, you got to be there. You got to pray 5 times a day or 3 times or come to church every Sunday, and be told what to think. So it's quite different. The furniture of the minds of idolaters and those who, believe in the Abrahamic God, who basically says,
Yeah.
You are my slaves. I own your minds. You can think you're not my slaves, but you'll see. It's that sort of thing. And oh yeah, you can pretend to believe in God, but I'm going to get you hypocrites, says Allah in the Quran, because according to the Quran, hypocrites go to hell.
Yeah.
Because obviously the problem is, being made to believe in stuff is people pretending to believe.
I think Western men are they're too proud, right? They're suffering for what was it? One of the 7 deadly sins of being proud, right?
Yes.
And the other one is they're too smart. And they're too smart to the point of being like, they will sacrifice their body for their mind. In other words, they will never submit to God, right? Prometheus
Unless they're given permission to do so by their ruling classes. And this means the media, basically, right? I mean, do you know what I mean when I say the 4th estate is now the 1st estate? So the 4th estate is basically the media. The 1st estate in
No, I know what you're saying.
France was the Catholic Church telling the French what to believe, right? That's the role of the priesthood. It tells the people what to believe, and also the king what to believe.
But the seduction of the media was interesting narratives, right? It was storytelling. That's what
the media just has to tell us stuff, and then we will know, for example, it's okay to discuss secular Quranism because Claire just, was interviewed by some big shot, journalist or something like that. And then people will talk about it. But of course, they're not going to talk about it, because I'm bumping along at the bottom, talking
still
only to
not,
marginalized people.
But you're still not understanding. It's not inspiring. I mean, just because okay, maybe that would be a good, what's the word? Fuck. What am I trying to think of? That would be a good, it would be a novelty, right? It would be incredible and amazing for 1 or 2 days, but it would never be kind of, driving anyone to do anything, really. It would just be kind of an incredible novelty that happened in the media, and then everyone would
A flash in the pan, a one-hit wonder. I would say that once people understand its potential, they would get on the bandwagon. And obviously, I would have to, go through a lot of obstacles in order to get that interview, because I think really the CIA controls Western media, and all these people who want to talk about it, even in an unfavorable way, have been told not to platform the idea. So I may have mentioned to you there was this Guardian journalist and this Facebook friend of mine who basically wanted his Guardian journalist friend to do a hatchet job on secular Quranism, and she was quite happy to do so, except that the sub-editor of the Guardian said, no, we're not going to platform this. And you may have noticed that the dissident right are not platforming.
I just think, okay, if you can somehow convince actual people, and when I say actual people, I mean people that are rising in terms of the I guess would say kind of the underlying force that is driving the right wing, unless you can kind of convince these people, which by the way, it's a great idea. This idea that we can set up, a logical kind of system of law, and that's based on the Quran. It doesn't matter really what it's based on, to be honest. It's based on something that is legally, effective, right? Or effective or effective, whatever. It's yeah. But there's no connection. Right, okay. So if you can convince these people that this is, just for the ruling classes and the system, but they can still live their lives how they want to, then if you can spin a narrative that convinces these people that it's just a treaty, it's just it's a way to get out from under the slavery that we live under, but we can still live our lives how we want, then the amount of people that will sign up is just beyond your measure. You will have so many supporters, you won't even know what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know you think that they are wrong for valuing their freedom. I know
I don't think they're wrong at all. Of course, they're afraid of giving up what the little that they still have for something untried and alien and foreign. So I totally understand. But I think what I need to make people understand is that victory is reachable. It is actually very probable that we win, as long as you kind of stick with it for a while and not get frightened. And I think a lot of people are very frightened because they have no convictions, right? And I think that they sort of need to understand the nature and purpose of religion. And
but hold on. We do understand all of that stuff, Claire.
But
We're not
you're fundamentally atheists.
No,
right?
no. Listen. We're not retarded. Despite the fact that we are losing hard, we're not actually retarded. Okay.
I know.
And
you're just pretending not to understand because you don't want to do it. You want to avoid.
Okay, yeah, socially we're pretending not to understand. I agree. But okay, well, I don't know. There has to be some inspiration here that's just beyond a system where clerical will be like, you know, the imam.
It's not even what I
that's
want
all
to
we're saying.
be. No, I think the problem is people can't imagine it ever working in their lifetimes, right? And then
But what I'm
they
saying
refuse to
is,
discuss it anymore.
what I'm saying is, you need to give them inspiration, right? They can't imagine it because there's no narrative or story that is
They
beyond
won't even engage
just
with
the
me.
logical system. No, I agree. But they will if you give them something that's kind of woo-woo, right? That's occultic. That's
Just believe.
Crowleyism. This stuff is what this stuff is, for some reason, I don't know if it's genetically like implanted in the Western soul, but this stuff where, like, you know, Prometheus is giving us the box. That's you know what I mean. You know, if Prometheus is giving us the fire, we need to see the fire. We need to open Pandora's box, or at least hold the box, or at least think that we may hold the box, right? Do you know what I mean, though?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason it's
I
not
need to tell
working
them
for
a
you.
story that they can believe in. That's what you're saying, right? I
Yeah,
need to
and
tell them a story that they want to believe in.
the story is not that we are not being moral enough, or not being logical enough, or that we don't value marriage enough, or that we don't hate feminism enough. This is not a story. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's a psychological assessment, right? But I think, you know, people won't do it if they don't think they're going to win. That's a problem. It's like, yeah, well, you know, if I say this,
Yeah, but
you know, people are going to
winning
look at
for
me
us,
funny.
let's be honest here. Winning for us is dying in battle and going to Valhalla, or it's creating great architecture and creating freedom for our group, and creating the HRE, or creating the yeoman farmer again. It's not, or creating Shakespeare again. It's not logic or law or hierarchy. I mean, even though we value hierarchy, that's not what it is. Do you know what I mean? That's not inspirational.
Well, I think people just need to believe that they're not going to get shot in the throat and they're going to win in their lifetimes, and then they'll do it, right? That's
Well,
basically it. Because I think
you keep
people
saying
will
this, and
disagree.
you keep. I'm just saying, you keep saying this, and you keep thinking that that's the answer, but it's not. I'm telling you now. I mean, the most exciting thing in right wing circles right now is Imperium Press and like a new fucking fantasy world that what's his name? I can't remember his name, but it's this new kind of Warhammer universe that, you know, these writers are creating, and it's not going to lead to anything good, right? I'm not saying it's gonna inspire men to fight or whatever, right? It's going into our own kind of lame existential kind of crisis, right? But I'm telling you now, that that is what excites us, unfortunately.
Sorry, what excites you? I didn't get.
Okay, we'll look up Imperium Press and look up I think it's called Cold Dads. I'll share it in the thing.
I think, it's just a matter of telling them a story that they can bring themselves to believe in and feel it, pertains to them. It's not that hard with AI. And then, of course, the other job is to convince them that they could easily win. Because, if you say, oh, it's going to be a struggle and it may not happen in, your lifetime, they're not going to bother, because basically they are atheists to a man and they don't believe that, good will be rewarded or evil punished. What do you want to say, Oxfordian? You're making noises. You going to talk to us? Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
What would you like to say?
I'm shy.
We're waiting.
Is this person okay? What is going on here?
It's the same person as before.
I'm shy.
What do you want to say?
Hello?
It's the one before.
I live
Okay,
in Oxford.
Well, let's just carry on then.
Claire, do you get a lot of these trolls that just like...
Yeah. I mean, in the longer streams, that they like to come on and porn bomb, and they obviously they don't. They have the thing is, if you had anything to say, you'd be saying it in the chat. You'd be asking to get on and saying I'm backstage, let me on, blah blah blah. But no, it doesn't matter. The lots of crazy people. But back to your point, people will only act if they think they're going to win, because they think politics is backing the right horse, right? And if they think both horses are going to not make it to the end, they're not going to bother. You can only sell the story of an easy win to cowards and people who don't believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished. And so I'm just creating a chain of reasoning that would lead people to want to believe in God. And once they want to believe in God, they will believe in God. It really is that simple.
Yeah. Well, I have to go. Thank you for the conversation. Sorry if I don't know, whatever. All right.
No, you were fine, and thank you for all your ideas, and you're very, very welcome for coming, and please come again and let me know when you want to stream, and it's been great.
All right. By the way, the link I sent wasn't even that cool. I said it was like the only hope for Western civilization, but it's not even. I mean, it was, it's something to consider though. But anyway, thank you for...
Okay.
Yeah, well, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that the story that pertains to Western civilization would be like, if God exists, why would he allow Christianity if he didn't agree with it? And I have a ready answer, which is that once it is obvious that the sin of idolatry is its own sin, then people, rational and good people, will correct themselves. And,
No, idolatry is basically everything.
Yeah, and narrative, and yeah. I'll try to tell the story better, because it obviously didn't impress you that much.
How do I even fucking quit this shit? I'll just close the tab. All right. Good work,
All
right?
right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye. Bye, everyone.